All right, welcome everybody to the February 18th, 2015 edition of the Professional VMware vBrownbag. So tonight we're going to be getting started with Ansible and vCenter with Jonathan Frappier. So just some quick show notes. You can join in on the conversation using the hashtag vBrownbag. You can also use GoToMeeting window to ask any questions or leave comments. Also remember that we have other podcasts going on globally, so check those out. You can also download the podcasts via iTunes or directly from professionalvmware.com. Your guest speaker tonight is Jonathan Frappier. You can find him on Twitter at jfrappier. I'm your host, Ahmad Yunus, and you can find me on Twitter at Ahmad_Yunus. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan.
Share my webcam? No, I don't want to do that. I don't think anyone else wants me to do that either.
No, please don't. Not after the first time. Okay.
Show. Nope.
You are now there you go.
Can everyone see my screen?
I see slide 1 of 18 down at the bottom. So it's
sorry, that's snow in front of it. It's kind of taken over the monitors as well here in Massachusetts. Ha, waka waka. All right, so I'm apparently going to skip all the jokes for tonight. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Frappier. Tonight we're going to look at using Ansible along with vCenter to perform some virtualization, some VM provisioning tasks. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to do a quick overview of some of the basic Ansible files, specifically the inventory file and playbooks, and see how those are put together. Look at an example vCenter playbook, and also look at being able to add prompts into those playbooks so that you don't have to add information statically in there. You can be prompted when you run the playbooks. This isn't going to be a full-on Ansible demo or presentation. We actually did one on the vBrownbag DevOps series back in November with Jeff Gerling, so I'd suggest you check that out. You can also check out his book, Ansible for DevOps, which I am also in the process of reading right now. It's a great book, so hop on over, check out that recording from November in the book, and I've got a couple blog posts on getting it set up as well, so if you don't have an environment set up, you can get up and moving pretty quickly. So why do we want to use Ansible together with vCenter? Well, first and foremost, we need configuration management tools. Even if you've got only 1 or 2 virtual machines, they still need to be managed, right? So why not use something easy like Ansible to do that configuration management? And since Ansible is fairly easy to set up, fairly flexible, easy to use, why not then also use that to do some of your provisioning tasks? You, as an administrator, quite simply can run a playbook, provision a new VM, clone an existing template, pull virtual machine information back if you're curious about how many vCPUs it has or how much memory it has. We can do those things with Ansible. Quick review of the inventory file. So an inventory file is a list of hosts that Ansible is going to manage. And when I say host, in this sense, I'm not talking ESXi hosts, but virtual machines, Linux, Windows, whatever Ansible supports would live in this inventory file. It can be either a static list that you've built, or it can be dynamic. There's some scripts you can run depending on the environment you're using. Is my audio okay? I just saw a tweet suggesting that I may not sound great.
No, I hear you fine.
Cool, awesome. So, we're up to 19 people. So your inventory file,
Squirrel.
Your inventory file is, yeah, no, let me close that screen and minimize Twitter here so I stop getting distracted. Okay, no, I don't see anything. So your inventory file is a list of hosts that you can manage. There's different scripts that you can run in order to dynamically build that file. We're not going to get into that tonight, and actually I'm still figuring that part of it out. You can also break the inventory file up into groups. So if you've got different servers within your environment, maybe web database servers, you can break those up in that inventory file and only run playbooks on certain hosts or certain virtual machines. So they're real simple. It's basically a text file. So that screenshot there is having one host in the inventory file. You can add as many hosts in there as you want. You could edit it in VI or just echo in new IP addresses or host names. However, this could be an extremely long list. Obviously, it starts to get unmanageable at certain points. Even maybe 2 hosts is unmanageable a little bit because those 2 hosts may have different functions. You may want to run different playbooks on them. So I mentioned that you can put hosts into groups, and all you do to put a host in a group is a set of brackets and the name of the group in between it. So now when I go to run a playbook, I can specify that I want to run a playbook only on my web group or on my DB group or whatever I've named that group. So it's very easy to maintain this inventory file. Static entries obviously will get a little tedious to manage as your environment grows, so there's different ways you can do it, and this is just one example of using IP ranges. So for example, maybe you've got a small range where you keep load balancers or web servers or proxy servers, and they're always, you always deploy 4 of them. There's always going to be 4. If one of them dies, you're going to shoot it in the head, spin up a new VM, and it's going to have the same IP. So I can put a range of IP addresses in there as well, and I know those are my proxy servers. Those are always the IP addresses. I can still just use that group name to run a playbook against that one group, and I can still run playbooks against everything by using all. So if I want to do a patch across all of the servers, maybe it's an operating system patch for whatever I'm using, I can do that as well. So even once you've broken it up into groups, you're not limited to running playbooks on just those groups. You can still do it on everything in the inventory file. So here's a pretty simple playbook. It's made up of hosts and users. So you would give it a username to connect to, not normally root, obviously. That's a pretty basic example. Also, I am not logged into root in my demo environment when I log in. That's just some magic trickery that I've done, so I'm not actually doing that. I kid, of course, it's my lab environment that I spun up just a couple days ago, and it's still pretty basic. So after your host, you have tasks, and those tasks define what's going to happen. So in this case, in this very simple playbook, I've given that task a name, and it's going to go out and do a yum update for a certain package. And then that package will get updated to, in this case, the latest package available from the repository. You can put multiple commands together, and yum being a fairly simple one to demo, you can have multiple items that get updated, multiple items that get installed. You can run shell commands. You can stop and start services. You can put things in called handlers. Those are commands that you might have to do often. So for example, you may need to stop and start Postgres as you're installing different components, different patches, getting it enabled. So you might create a handler to start a certain service or stop a certain service that you can call within there anytime, and then all you have to do, you can see at the bottom of that task list, is notify the name of the handler. In this case, it's start Postgres. So I can just very simply type notify start Postgres or stop Postgres or stop SSH or whatever service that I want to manage. I can do that with handlers as well. Makes it easy to do repetitive tasks over and over again in kind of shorthand. So getting Ansible ready for vCenter is actually pretty simple. Assuming you've got Ansible already installed and running, it's just an extra package that you need to install. So sudo pip install PySphere will get the prerequisites needed for Ansible to talk to vCenter and pull information, log into your vCenter server, your ESXi host, and interact with various vCenter commands. So here is a playbook specifically to create a virtual machine in vCenter, and this is one of the three things that Ansible as now can do. The documentation for Ansible, I should also mention, is fairly awesome on most things. It seems that this is a little dated, and shame on me for not going in and updating it and issuing a pull request to update it. But this basic playbook here to create a virtual machine, based on my testing, is the bare minimums that you need to actually run this playbook. Not all of these items are listed in the documentation as required. So when I first built mine, I went through relying on documentation, didn't think I needed data center or host name, but I actually do. So if you're trying to get this working, looking at the documentation, that's a smidge out of date at this point. So these are the minimum tasks that we need in Ansible in order to actually spin up that new virtual machine. So pretty easy to set up, stuff that you would normally do in vCenter, right? So you'd normally connect to your vCenter server, you'd normally give it a virtual disk, a size, a type, select your data store, the network port group you want to connect to, how much memory CPUs. Those are all things that we're already doing in vCenter today, but I can have that all defined so that every time I stand up a new virtual machine, it will be stood up the exact same way. Now this right now would also, this particular task would rely on having some other operating system provisioning tool to actually install your operating system. So this is going to stand up an empty VM, but we can also clone templates using Ansible. So a similar format, I've got my host at the top just like I did in the previous one. That will need to be in all of your playbooks. And from what I can tell, based on cobbling together some posts out on the interwebs, this seems to be mostly just dummy information, because as you can see below in the task, we've actually defined the vCenter server and the vCenter account that we're going to connect to vCenter with. But that host information, it's part of the playbook. It doesn't need to be in there. If it's not, your playbook will not run. You'll get an error. So here we're doing more or less a clone, right? So we've got our template source. In this case, a CentOS template. We're telling it to clone from template, giving it a guest name, giving it our same vCenter username and password. So all stuff that we're pretty accustomed to doing already in a vCenter environment, we can do pretty simply, basically with a text file in Ansible by creating that playbook. The vars prompt that I mentioned earlier, so this will allow us to prompt for information. As you can see here, I put stars where my very secure password for my vCenter lab is that I spin up and spin down at various points. So if you care to try to guess my password, and I'm guessing that at some point I'm going to have a playbook or type something in that will show that accidentally, and I'm not too worried about it because it will probably be destroyed in a couple of weeks anyways. But this will allow us to prompt for information, right? So if I don't want to store my password in a playbook, I can have it prompt for a password when I run that particular playbook, and it will prompt when, as soon as I run the playbook, it will come up, and in this case, it will ask me to enter a password where that prompt is. I just enter the text that I wanted to say, and then I fill that in down below with quotes, curly brackets, and then the name of the variable that I've entered in above. The private option will be whether it shows you what you're typing or not. I think in my sample playbook, which I'll open up and show you in a second anyways before we run it, I think is set to no right now because I was doing some troubleshooting before the show. I wanted to make sure I was typing that properly. So pretty easy to add that in. We could do that for, if you've got multiple vCenter names, you could have a prompt for vCenter, you could have a prompt for username, guest name, any of the things that you may want to do. That may change over time. I wouldn't want to have to edit my playbook every time I run it to type in a guest name, so I might choose to prompt for a guest name every time I run that playbook and type something in.
So we have our first question.
I don't know anything about Ansible. Don't ask me questions.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. All right.
Yeah.
Shoot.
All right. So Sean wants to know, how is this better or different from using PowerCLI?
It is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily better. but since I can potentially already use Ansible for, see, I opened Twitter, there I go, squirrel. I can use Ansible for other things, and since I'm potentially already going to use this to do configuration management within my operating system, and Ansible supports both Windows and Linux, so you can have a mixed environment. It doesn't have to just be, you don't have to just be using PowerShell or some other tool to manage Linux and some other tool to manage Windows. I can do it all from Ansible. So I would say that some of the stuff that I'm showing you here, you could very well do with PowerCLI. But if you're already using this to do configuration management, you could continue to use that same tool, the same management environment that you're using to manage configuration to also then clone those virtual machines. So not better, it's just a different tool, a different way to get it done. Does that answer Sean's question? Yay, nay?
Yes, sir. He says, yep.
Cool.
Proceed.
Proceed. All right, demo time. I told you this was going to be a quick show. So let's see what, please don't ask me any questions. Yes, absolutely.
No, ask more questions as a matter of fact.
I closed Twitter again. Sorry about that, folks. All right, so here is my environment that I am not logged into as root regardless of what it says in the terminal window. So let's go look at my... So you can see here I've got two playbooks that I've set up and may or may not have tested and may or may not know that work. I've not quite finished my my sacrifice to the demo gods yet, so I don't want to kick this off just yet. So let's look, open up one of these files and take a look at what it looks like. So you can see here similar to, there we go. So you can see here similar to the slide I had before, I've got my host information, which for this particular playbook is not really relevant, but it needs to be part of the playbook in order for it to be a valid playbook. I've got my prompt in there, so it will prompt me for a password when I run this playbook. You'll notice right now it is set to no. So if FBI, if I were to run that playbook, you can see right away it's going to ask me for that password, and whatever I type in, I am going to see. So I may not always want that to happen, and this is what controls my ability to see that password when I type it in. So now if I run that, you can see, I don't know if you can hear me hacking away on my keyboard, you don't actually see that password being typed in, so it's a bit more secure. There's also options for prompts to encrypt that. I didn't quite get around to playing with that yet, so maybe I'll do a follow-up blog post with that and post the sample playbooks if folks want to take a look and play around with those. So going through, I've got my prompt to ask for a password. I've got my vCenter name, and you can see here where I've prompted, I've given it a name of some password because I copied the documentation almost exactly from Ansible. And put that password, that same variable in here. Whatever is in this area just needs to match your var's prompt section. So if I just had called this password up here and change that to password, that's fine as long as those things match. The state I want to start my virtual machine, or how I want my virtual machine, if it once it creates it, it will power it on. Maybe I've got some provisioning tool that's watching for new virtual machines and is going to push out or pixie boot or something along those lines to get the OS there. My disk size, my data store that I want to provision to, my port groups, you know, all the things that, again, that we're normally doing in vCenter anyways, except I can have that stored very simply right here in a text file, easy to read, easy to see, I think most people would look at this. I mean, I'm by no means a Linux or Ansible expert, and I find this fairly readable. So the format's really nice to look at as well. So let's go ahead and run that playbook. So as you can see, I've given the guest name test Ansible 1. And if I can find vCenter, and I can find no magic, folks, no hidden doors, anything like that, you can see I have no virtual machine in here called test Ansible 1. So if I run this playbook now, it's going to start. Another cool thing about Ansible as well, I've got some static information in there. You don't have to worry about Ansible overwriting anything. It's going to go out and check if something already exists. So you can see here, I've got a changed equals 1. If I were to run this playbook again, and I know anything about what I'm talking about and have played with this a little bit, the change should come back as 0 because the virtual machine test Ansible that I've now created already exists. So if we do that again, that same task will run, but now you can see nothing's changed in my environment. Ansible went out and said, oh, you know what, there's already a test Ansible 1 here. I'm not going to do anything to mess with that virtual machine. Everything's in a state that I expect it to be in, which is more on the configuration management side, but a really cool feature. So you can actually see at a high level, if you're using this for configuration management, if your virtual machine, your host that you're trying to manage is already set up in the state that you want it to be in. You can run that playbook over and over and over again. If there's nothing to change, Ansible won't change it. But if you suspect something's out of sorts, somebody may have updated a package you didn't want to, Ansible will put that back into the state you wanted to. Again, that's more on the config management side, so I don't want to get too far off topic here, but a cool thing that you can do with Ansible. So we've also got the clone playbook that I mentioned we can also do with Ansible. So again, fairly similar to our, oh, there we go. I knew that password would get in the recording somewhere. Everyone knows my lab password now. I'm going to have to change that. Sean Wynn, who I think is watching, probably no, he didn't do the labs in the class that we did a few weeks ago.
I think I'm just going to go ahead and tweet it out now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also VMware, one exclamation point with a capital W is my real secure VMware password. This is my new lab environment that I just set up, so folks want to get in, they can do that because it's off all day anyways.
Hey, we do have another question.
Oh, man, you guys are killing me. I'm trying to do a live demo here.
Bring all the questions, remember that.
Amen.
When do we get unreachable or failed values?
Unreachable or failed? I have no idea what that means.
And can you elaborate a little bit more on that question? Tell you what, go ahead and keep going, and if he elaborates, we'll wait. He says, when you run a playbook, we got changed equals 1 for the first time.
Yep. That's because the virtual machine did not exist at that point. So the reason that there was a change is because Ansible did change something that created that virtual machine. So on subsequent runs, if I did not change that guest name, right, and like I said, that's probably something I'd want to prompt for, as opposed to having to edit the playbook every time I ran it. I'd probably prefer to be prompted to enter a guest name for my virtual machine. Then you would see. So let's go back. All right. So let's go back then.
And then on top of that, but we also got. Whoa, more questions are coming in. Yay, questions! But we also got OK equals 1.
Yep. Oh, I see. So it's when would it get unreachable or failed here?
Yeah, and here's another one. In that line, you will see other value switches which are failed and unreachable, which were equals 0. What were the scenarios it changes?
I've not gotten deep enough into the VMware integration yet to have reached one of those. I have gotten several other error messages, but not anything that has caused those flags to be flipped. But as soon as I find one, I will let folks know via the Twitters or update the follow-up blog post we put on there. So that's the best I can give you right now is an I don't know. So going back to the OK versus changed, so we did make a change. The second time we ran it with the same name, nothing was changed because it already existed. So if I change this guest name now to some other value, even though it's the same playbook, when I run that now, I should get changed equals 1 again as well.
Really? Jeopardy?
Yep. Jeopardy. There we go. Changed equals 1, and if I hop back into vCenter, I should see my test Ansible 2 virtual machine now up and running as well. So same playbook, same exact playbook. I just changed the value for the virtual machine name, so that would kind of give you the same behavior if you were prompting for a guest name, unless you entered the guest name of something that already existed, because Ansible would see that it already existed and wouldn't create it again or try to mess with existing resources. So cloning, if we want to take a look at that as well. So I've got a couple of templates here. I've got 2 that you can see. Actually, the CentOS 7 one is actually just a dummy VM that I used for some other demo. So I'm going to clone my CentOS template here. Again, all of these, even though the Ansible documentation right now doesn't say all of them are required, this is the minimum task configuration that I could get this playbook to work for when cloning the virtual machines. So if you're going through this in a lab environment or in the office tomorrow or whenever we post the recording, these are the ones you will need, and I'll get these posted up, these examples posted up as well, probably tomorrow morning, so folks have access to them. But same thing, it's going to go ahead and it's going to head, I gotta close Twitter. Go ahead and clone a virtual machine.
Hey, by the way, does this work fine with Windows systems? I would assume yes, because you're running it on a Windows system, but it was one of the questions.
Yeah, so Ansible supports configuration management for Windows. The Linux executable, it's the Linux. The Ansible application needs to run on Linux. I don't think there's a Windows application version of Ansible, so you will need at least a Linux virtual machine to manage your environment. The cool thing with Ansible is it's pretty dang easy to set up, so I had actually blown up my Ansible management server, if you will, a couple of weeks ago because I was cleaning up files on my desktop and accidentally deleted the template that it was cloned from in Workstation. So then all of a sudden, obviously, my Ansible VM wouldn't turn on, and I spun this up. I cloned the repository from GitHub, ran a few commands, and was back up and running literally within a few minutes. The longest part of setting it back up mostly was waiting for Yum to download packages.
We have 2 more questions. You ready?
Man. Shoot.
All right. So first one, how do you create multiple VMs by running the Ansible playbook just once?
Probably. Again, I'm just getting dirty with the VMware integration, so I don't know if there's a way to rerun it or just have that playbook copied multiple times. So, for example, what I'm thinking of is I would typically use this to deploy, say, a set of virtual machines for a specific purpose, right? Like I mentioned earlier, maybe you've got some virtual machines that run as proxy servers or firewalls or other services within your network. So I may have a playbook if I always want 4 virtual machines for my proxy servers to be spun up whenever I run this playbook. I might configure that playbook to do those things over and over again. Remember, you can do multiple commands, multiple tasks within a playbook. So that's certainly one way to do it. I don't know that that's the best way to do it. I don't know if you can feed it like an array of values for virtual machines and just have it loop through like I might in PowerShell, but I'll play with that a little bit more. after the show as well.
Okay, the next question. If you change a setting, let's say like hard drive size, is the VM updated or is the check only that VM exists for the create VM script?
That is a wonderful question. And since we're doing a live vBrown, I'm almost done with my sacrifice to the computer gods. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can knock the rest of the scotch back before we do that. Not quite. I'm going to save a little bit for the next demo, though. Let's try it.
Sean says C3PO can speak over 6 million languages. Does he know Ansible?
I believe so. I believe that is actually in episode 7. That will come out. But we'll have to go to the movies and see that when it comes out. Change a bunch of stuff in here. All right, so I just changed my hard drive size to 2, CPUs to 2, and memory to 2 gigs. Now I'm going to assume for a moment that this might fail if CentOS 6, whatever, that's actually nothing right now. There's no operating system there. Will that work? Oh, let's see. Create VM. Everyone is waiting in suspense. What's going to happen? So it looks like nothing changed in that case. That was Ansible 2, yeah? Yep. There are options in Ansible, I believe, to update configuration settings, so that might be a different task that we need to run in order to change those settings. I can pull facts. I'll have to play around with updating a bit there. So that doesn't seem to work. So I'll look at that also. What were we doing? Templates, right?
Sure.
Sure. So Ansible Playbook. Finally, let's clone. So this one's going to take a little while because there's actually some meat behind what it's doing. But you can see here, after kicking that off in Ansible, my clone operation, just as I would do, as one of the Sean's watching mentioned earlier, potentially I could do with PowerCLI, but if I'm already in here to manage how my VM's configured, why not kick off the clone process as well and spin up that virtual machine? So this will take a few minutes. We won't see much of a response from Ansible right here, so you can watch it in vCenter, I guess, and we can watch that virtual machine get spun up. Assuming your templates are built properly, as I hope this one is for my demo, this should clone, power on, get an IP address, and then I should be able to connect to that virtual machine once it's done. To go back to the working with Windows question, so just to finish that off, you will need to install Ansible on Linux, but you should be able to, from a vCenter perspective, it doesn't really care what type of virtual machine it's cloning, whether it's a Windows template or a Linux template, so at the very least you can clone that, and then you should be able to also manage your Windows configuration through Ansible playbooks as well. So once you've powered on that virtual machine, once you've cloned it, it's powered on, has an IP address on your network, you should be able to use Ansible to also manage that. The easier demo for these purposes is Linux, because that's what it was built for. Linux or Windows support was added in version 1.7 or somewhere around there, I think, of Ansible. I'm not quite sure where they're at right now. A little more than a year ago, I think they released it for Windows management.
So Gordon is asking.
Does I have any more slides?
He wants to make sure that he understood that you were changing your VM settings via Ansible.
I thought there was an option in Ansible to reconfigure a guest, and I just pulled up the docs right now on Ansible. Like I said, for the most part, the Ansible documentation is really good. Like any other project that you're going to find documentation on, every now and again there might be a gap or so, and this seems to be one of the gaps. That reconfigure CPU and memory on the newly created VM looks an awful lot like the playbook I have. VM extra config. Yes. I am not logging in as root. That is just a messing with your eyes there.
This is not the login you're looking for.
So you might, from looking at the documentation, assuming this part is correct, it looks like we might want to consider this state here needing to change. So actually, let me. While that clone is running, let's play around a bit and see what we've got. Spacing is actually very important. If you get any errors with your playbook along the lines of like this task is not allowed at this level or something like that, check your indentation on the playbook. Just a little quirk on that right now. So for example, if I backed this vSphere guest task up so it aligned, if I had this back here, I'd likely get an error running. And of course, I don't remember where that was now. Here or so? That looks right. That's where I'm going to try it anyways. I might need to have this hot add setting in the create virtual machine, but let's try it and see. We're waiting for something to clone anyways, right?
Sure.
That all looks good. Not quite done yet. Almost done, 82%. Just wait for that to finish since it's almost done before I start messing with the computer gods. I'm pretty sure that's what blew up my application services demo a while back because I tried to get too multitasky. Do we have any on-hold music while this clones? Eric Wright on the line anywhere? Can he play us some vBrownbag tunes?
Okay.
He was supposed to do some live music for one of these sessions, and he's disappeared on me a bit. You out there, Disco Posse? Where's the guitar?
I don't see him on the list, but...
You don't see him on the list? Boo. You can tweet out that I called them out. So our, you can see here we've that clone is completed. Refresh my inventory here, and I should see my new clone. so that's going swimmingly well so far. If we come back here, we can see again that I've had one changed item because it actually did something. Virtual machine is powering on. Come on, IP address. Boo, this worked before the show. Did I just get it too quickly? All right, while that refreshes, apologies for the slow vCenter. It's not the web client's fault, folks. It's my lab. I'm pretty heavily nested, as you can see here, with everything running in the background. So let's go, and there's my update VM playbook. So let's see. I'm guessing this. I've not ever created a playbook on the first shot without getting error messages, so I'm expecting some sort of error that we'll have to troubleshoot. Yay, there we go. Yep, so we need, and there we go. I just crashed my vCenter. Hooray for resource contention. So yeah, it looks like if we had added that hot memory add to the initial VM creation, we probably would have had some better luck. So I'll give that a try and post if that worked afterwards. So maybe that's something you want to also consider adding, assuming your operating system supports that to your playbook. So, any more questions out there?
As of right now, we have one.
Okay, go.
All right. So Ryan wants us to do a quick 60-second comparison between Ansible, VMware, Configuration Manager, Puppet, and Chef.
So all very awesome tools. The thing I like about Ansible personally, and not taking away from any of the others, but again, we looked at the playbook. So if I bring that playbook back up, pretty easy to read that. It doesn't take a lot to get going, find examples, pull documentation in from Ansible, and get set up running very quickly. Quite literally, you can see in the background there behind my PuTTY window that link to vertexpert.com / yes Ansible. That's search for all things Ansible on my blog. On there, there's 4 posts. There's an installation post. There's setting up inventory file and a couple quick playbooks. You could literally be using Ansible, depending on your internet connection and how long it might take to download some of the packages that you need to your virtual machine to set that up. You could probably be using Ansible in 30 to 45 minutes when we hung up this show. It's that easy to set up. It's that easy to read. The learning curve's very low. Even if you just start doing basic things to ensure virtual machines in your environment are configured properly in the way you want, is a very easy thing to achieve with Ansible. So I would say they're all great tools. They all have their pros and cons. Those are the pros for me for Ansible. So yeah.
Any Ansible playbooks for ESXi host settings?
Not that I'm aware of, because Ansible is using SSH to connect to, in this case, your Linux operating systems, and it's expecting to be in Bash. And since you, a former coworker of mine, who really drove an Ansible project at my last company, she was pretty awesome and always out there. So Sarah, if you're listening, thank you for all of your support. We tried pretty hard one day to get Ansible talking to ESXi to manage configuration, and at this point it's just not something that it does. But interestingly enough, and this may or may not change in the future, but one of the vSphere 6 one of the vSphere 6 things that I read in their documentation, I forget which product it's for now because I've been reading the doc so much. It looks like they're actually using Ansible to do some configuration for different appliances. Because it's agentless, it just needs SSH to connect out there. If you've got a Linux appliance, a Linux virtual machine, a Linux physical host, and you can SSH to it, you can use Ansible to manage it and configure it. And it looks like at least some of the beta stuff out there is using Ansible to do some configuration work on some of the vSphere 6 appliances. Again, that's beta stuff, so may change by the time it gets to GA, but looks like folks at VMware are at least aware of that as well, so maybe they'll write some modules to support that in the future.
Come on, guys. We got like 15 minutes. More questions.
45 minutes, that's good. We don't have to go an hour. We don't need to stretch it. I hate white space sensitive languages too, Dan. That's why I shouldn't look at Twitter. So while my vCenter is recovering in the background, again, you want to really get into what Ansible can do from a configuration management standpoint, a lot more in depth than the vCenter functionality that there is today. Check out the vBrownbag we did back in November, and you can check out Jeff's book as well. And then, like I said, the post I have on my blog is meant to be simple, straightforward. If it took you more than an hour to follow those 4 blog posts and get Ansible up and running and doing something in your environment, it's because you have a slow internet connection. And it's just taken that long to download the stuff. It's really easy to get started and start leveraging Ansible for things. There's a free version, at least it used to be free for up to 10 hosts, so depending on your environment or what you're using it for. There's that. There's paid versions. There's a GUI version that I've not played with in a long time, so I don't know how the GUI version looks, but for those that may have to make this available to other people that might be less technical and not comfortable poking around in a command line environment, there is a GUI version. It's called Ansible Tower, I believe, is the paid product, so you can check that out as well.
So Anthony has more of a comment, but there's a question at the end. So it says, funny, but all this happened last week. Saw a VMware job posting for chef/DevOps. VMware SE told me about how Goldman Sachs used Salt to manage ESXi hosts. Now this Ansible. What happened to the VMware Puppet marriage?
I don't think that's going anywhere. From what I know, it's still, I don't work at VMware, so I don't have any insights into that. But I was at the Providence, Rhode Island VMUG just a few months ago, and the folks from Puppet were there. Heck, that might have been a year ago now. That's scary. The folks were there. There's a lot of integration between Puppet and vCloud Automation Center and Application Services, which are obviously 2 big products for VMware. So I don't think that Puppet marriage is going away. I just think there's a lot of different tools that can do a lot of different things in a lot of different circumstances. And one of the things I was hoping to do from a vBrownbag perspective as we've gone through the DevOps series is show how some different tools can work together. So in this case, Ansible and vCenter working together. But there's a lot of different combinations of things you may use depending on your requirements. You may have an environment that you can't install agents on in your environment. It's got very strict, very rigid requirements as to what can be installed on those virtual machines. So maybe Ansible makes sense to manage that crop, whereas Puppet or Chef or Salt or there's a lot of great tools out there. Application Services even. To do deployments may make sense for other groups as well. So I don't think in the short term we're going to see a single product that does every single thing. There'll probably be different products that you have for different use cases.
Also,
Jeremy said I had a drink every time there's a question, so I just need a second to finish off this scotch.
Also, if you noticed, they're integrating Puppet with VCO. or vRealize, whatever you want to call it now.
vRow.
Yeah, vRow.
vRow and vRAR and FS.
So Puppet is definitely here.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, Puppet's not going away. Like I said, I think it'll just be, over the next couple of years, it'll be a group of tools. I would imagine that the configuration management space will go through some sort of consolidation eventually, where you may see different projects merge or get sold into bigger providers. I mean, IBM, I just saw an article the other day that they're throwing a bunch of money into this whole wacky software-defined space, so you may see them buy up some tools to help manage, do configuration management for whatever solution they're trying to build. So I would imagine in the next couple of years you'll start to see some of these projects consolidate. All right.
I don't see any more questions in the go-to, and I'm sure you're watching Twitter as I am, so I don't see any there as well.
Looks like we're good. Curious if my vCenter server came back to life. I'll check that after the show. I won't bore people. So that's all I got, folks. You know where to find me on Twitter. If you got any questions, if you're trying to do something, feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to help out. This is, this side of the world is new for me too. I'm used to living on pretty strictly the virtualization side, so I'm trying to get more involved with some of these tools, and I think this is a great one for folks who are getting started to pretty easily pick up.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch. And,
thank you.
With that, I'm actually going to stop the recording now.
Have a good night, everyone.